All right, I'm going to give you a mini lecture right now. Okay, this is a mini lecture on function notation. So we're going to learn how to read function notation, obviously, and how to apply it using this example. All right, so some of you may be thinking right now that you know what function notation is and you know how to read it and apply it. Maybe you do on a very rote level, but I think most students at this level do not fully grasp what we're really saying when we use function notation. So I'm going to go into a little bit of depth here. And what I know to be true is that this is going to kind of unlock a lot of clarity for many students that you will be wishing that you had heard this long ago. So let's begin. First, I want to read what it says in the presentation of the problem. Right? It says the graph of y equals f of x, which is our solid line. Okay, so I'm going to just use blue for that. I like to color code. So we're going to be referring to the blue line when we want to talk about the function f, right? And then it says, and y equals g of x, which is the dashed line, okay? So that is here. Okay? So now whenever I'm talking about the function g, I can also refer to it as the green line. And likewise, whenever I'm talking about the function f, I can refer it to the blue line. Okay, so I can just have multiple ways of referring to these things. That's a start. All right, now let's talk about what each one of those things actually mean. When it says y equals f of x, that means all or any, you could say all or any y value. This notation right here is representing all or any y value corresponding to a given x value for an ordered pair or point in the form of x comma y on the blue line, right? So now, if I am to say, what is the y value on the blue line? Okay, let's say I posed that question to you. Think about it for a sec. How would you want to answer this? Now, hopefully, you are scratching your head and saying to yourself, there's lots of different possible y values, so which one is she referring to, right? Or in other words, your answer might be something like, that depends, okay? So in other words, the y value on the blue line depends on what, okay? It depends on something, okay? So what's the something? It means saying that depends is another way of saying I need more information here, okay? You need to be more specific. So what needs to be specified here? What needs to be specified is on the x coordinate, okay? Right? You're like, oh, all right, so if I'm going to tell you what the y value is on the blue line, you're going to have to tell me first which x value you would like me to use, because I can select any point on this function, right? If I select this point right here, well, that would correspond to an x value of -7. And then my y value that corresponds to that x value of -7 on the blue line is lining up with 5 on the y-axis, okay? So, and just to make sure we're all on the same page, we're using the typical basic grid system where we consider the vertical axis to be your y values and or to represent your y direction, and the horizontal is representing all your x values, right? Right, so that's why if the question were worded better or more specific, I would have said instead, instead of saying what is the y value on the blue line, let's perfect that, okay? So I would add to that, right? I would say, what is the y value on the blue line when x equals something, okay? So I'm going to be specific. I don't necessarily need to use that point. Let's say I ask instead on the blue line when x equals, we'll say 2, okay? So if I say, what is the y value on the blue line when x equals 2? Then I know I have to go to the blue line, find out where x equals 2, and go and find the point on the blue line that corresponds to that x value of 2, and then figure out what is the y value that it corresponds to. So that's -4 here. So the answer here would be y equals -4, right? That's one way I could answer it. I could just say -4 is the answer. And there's different ways I could have asked the same question. So instead of using all these words, I could have said simply something equivalent, something replaceable with that. Okay, instead I could have said it like this. Find f of 2. Okay, that's what I could have said. And then in the box, I would put the answer -4. Okay, so there's different ways of stating these things. And similarly, for the other function, you know, g of x is representing any y value on the in an ordered pair of a point on the green line, depending on a selected or given value of x. Okay, so whereas f of +2 gave me -4, g of +2 would give us what? So going back to 2 again on the x-axis, then aligning, finding where that falls on the green line, I get the ordered pair 2, 3. So then my answer is 3. Okay, so the ordered pair 2, 3 is an x value of 2 with a y value of 3, right? Okay, so let me pause the video and erase all this, and I'll tell you the next thing we need to know. All right, so now that we understand function notation, let's focus in on what it says down here, okay? That's what we're being asked to find in the first part of this question. So I'm going to write that out up here. F of g of 1 equals question mark, okay? Now, let's break that notation down to understand what we're really being asked to do. It's going to seem very confusing, I guarantee you, at first, but I'm going to take it slowly, and then I'll simplify it. All right, so I'm just going to, I've already read out loud as I was writing. I said f of g of 1 equals what? Okay, that's what I read. Now, in plain English, how does that sound? I would say the y value on the point on the blue line corresponding to the x value that equals Okay, now I'm going to pause for a moment because the next thing that I'm going to write is going to be very long-winded and sound very confusing. So I just want to try to manage your expectations here. So far, this is probably a lot already. I just want you to understand. But what I've said so far is that the notation there, f of g of 1, in plain English, is asking for the y value on or in the point coordinates, the point that's on the blue line, corresponding to the x value that equals. Okay, so now we're going to talk about what the x value would equal. So I'm going to use green now because we're going to start talking about the g function since that's what's on the inside. You know, normally when we see this notation representing the blue line, this blue line right here is the function f, or f of x is the longer way to say that, letting us know that each y value on this blue line is tied to a specific x value. Right, so that's why we call x independent, because it gets chosen without any special extra information independently. It's just independently, we just kind of randomly select an x value, or we're sometimes given the x value by what the problem serves up to us, right? But then your y value is actually dependent part, is the dependent variable. Dependent variable. Okay, so that's what we mean. So now I'm about to say, I started off by talking about some point on the blue line, and I want to focus on the y value as my answer. But which x value should I align this point with? You want to find the x value that exists in the point coordinates on the green line when x equals 1. Okay, so this is your x value that you want to find on the green line for this point. So there's an ordered pair on the G line, and that's going to be your contain your x value paired with the corresponding y value. Okay, that's what's going to go right here. Now, once we figure out what that y value is for the point lying on the g function, we're going to then use that as the x value in our blue function. Okay, so this is our green function g. Let's go on the coordinate plane and find an x value of 1. That's right here. And that aligns with this point on the green line. And the coordinates on that green line, of course, the first coordinate is 1, representing x, the horizontal location. And corresponding to that is the y value corresponding there is 2. Okay, so then now I have figured out what goes inside of the notation that was given in this problem. Right? So now I'm just going to take what we were originally given, this right here, and I'm going to rewrite it as f of, and instead of writing g of 1, now I know that g of 1 is actually the answer to the y value on the g line when x equals 1. So I'm going to put that in. And now, to finish this, what I need to do is look for the ordered pair on the blue line that has the x value of 2, and then my answer is going to be whatever this y value is. So I go over to my blue function, I look for the x value of 2 so that I can use it to determine or identify what is the y value. So here is my x value of 2 on the x-axis. And I'm working my way over to the blue line now. I see that corresponds to a point that has an x-coordinate of 2 and a y-coordinate of -4. So now my answer is y equals -4 when x equals 2 on the blue line. All right, now I know that was a lot. So we're going to do another example. Okay, I'm going to just clean this up and restart the video. This one, the answer was -4. But now we're going to do a similar one just for extra practice, right? So moving a little more quickly than previously. So I'm going to start with that innermost value, 3. And I'm going to say x equals 3. Now, from there, I'm going to focus on the next thing inside. So I'm working from the inside out. I'm going to focus on this part that says g of 3 for x, comma, lining up with a vertical location of 4 on the y-axis. So far what we said is that y is 4 when x is 3 on the green line. Okay, that's what we just said. Okay, now using that, we're going to rewrite this notation here with our simplified information that we just found. So now I'm going to write f of, and instead of writing g of 3 inside there again, I'm going to write the more simple version of that and just say 4. Okay, y value for the point, and I should be using blue probably, the y value on the blue line when x is 4, okay? Because remember, whatever is inside the function is what you're going to substitute for your x value. So now we go over to the blue line, we find 4 on the x-axis, then we follow that to the blue line and locate the point that lies on the blue line when x is 4, and note what the corresponding y value is. Here it is -6. So that would be the answer. Let's do the second part of the question next. So we've done 2 examples for that first box. Now I'm going to focus in the next section of this video on answering the second part of the question. The notation g of 1. Now the square brackets are just used to make it easier to see, to distinguish the parentheses apart from each other. What's on the very, very inside of this is 1. So I'm going to write in green for x equals 1, what is the y value? Okay, because that's what the g around the number 1 means. So what is the y value when x equals 1 on the green g function line? Okay, so now I'm going to go to where x equals 1, find the point on the green line, and just write down the ordered pair, and then take the y value as the answer to this step. Okay, so it's like we're starting fresh. Okay, we're not going to want to think about any of this other stuff anymore. Now we're just going to put in the number 2, which was the answer to that previous step. So if x equals 2, then y equals what? Okay, so now I go to where x equals 2. Yes, I'm staying on the green line this time because it's g of g, right? So both parts, both steps in this problem are using the green function. And so here I get the coordinates 2, comma 3. So that should be my answer right there. So that is what I would put there in the answer box.